So I'm ready to start on the skirt part of this dress. Now to explain to you a little bit of its math. The motifs, like I said before, they have 10 picots to join to the top. It will have 10 picots to join to the other motif on the sides. And on the bottom here, it will have 14 picots to join to the skirt. Now, obviously I had to modify a little bit this side of the motif in order to have 14 picots. The skirt starts here with supposedly foundation chain and with picots attached to it, but we're gonna work the same way as we did for the top, and that means the foundation chain will be here, and then we'll work the row of filet crochet with picots. And because the skirt starts with a different number of popcorns around, there's lots of chain stitches involved here and a little bit of math. So before we move on, I want to show you something. My stitch pattern, normally the first row is double crochet, chain one, double crochet, chain one, so on and so forth, the filet crochet row. Okay, for the skirt, when I start the row, I made a little bit of increases here. So instead of a double crochet, I have a V-stitch with a chain in between these two double crochets. This chain, I kept it, so I carried it along. That's the only modification I made for this time, for the first stitch pattern. Again, instead of one double crochet, I work double crochet, chain one, double crochet. This is just a general chart for you to understand what's going on when we work the first row of the stitch pattern repeat. But you're not gonna need this further. It's just for now. And this is the new chart, how we're gonna start our foundation chain and the first row of our stitch pattern. So up here, if you see, normally it should have been one double crochet, chain one double crochet, chain one double crochet, but like I said, I modified it with two double crochets and one chain in between, and I kept these stitches too because I need the picots that I have here to match my motif when I'm gonna join. And on the bottom here, I need to be able to have sort of like a double number of stitch pattern repeats than what I had previously for the top part of the dress. So it's a little bit confusing, but don't get confused. Just follow this chart for the first row, just like we did for the top. I'm gonna show you once too, and you'll know. So I made a few calculations here as well. Like I have from this point, from this chain to this chain here, like up to this line here, there are 96 stitches. So remember when I in the first part, I think when I had these numbers here, and I gave you the number of motifs for each size. So I went and I used these numbers in order to calculate how many chain stitches you'll need for the foundation chain for the skirt. I took this as a template, like the 96 stitches is something fixed, right? And 96 stitches multiplied by the number of motifs you have at the waistline will give you the number of chain stitches you need to start your foundation chain with. So for extra small, if you're not following my pattern exactly, but you want to be super precise and you have 5 motifs there, then you're gonna need 480 chain stitches to start with. S and M, because I established then that we need 6 motifs for that. you're gonna have 576 chain stitches, and this is what I start my work with. Size large, 672 chain stitches. Extra large, 768 chain stitches. So you can screenshot this so you can have it, and you can follow these numbers, but most importantly this chart. So let me explain the chart again. For the bottom part of the motifs, we're gonna have 14 picots, and since the first picot is the same as the 14th, when we are going to work, we're gonna work up to here, and then immediately we're gonna start from this line, the repeat in our skirt. And when you get to your last repeat, then you're gonna work this, which is gonna be the same as this, and then you'll end with a chain one into your first cluster, something like that. Now I got the ruler just to help me follow which stitch I'm working on and where I have to be, so I just don't mess anything. I also took the liberty and I made my 576 chains, and I joined them in a ring, and I already worked the first repeat. I marked my 14th picot, and now I am ready to start to repeat this section again. So like I said, this one I'm not working because I already worked it here. The next thing is a chain one. I think I'm gonna make a close-up just so you can see better. So now I have to work my chain one here. So chain one. Next thing, I move my ruler and I see that I have a cluster of 2 double crochets. So if up here I have one chain between the 2 clusters, on the bottom here I have, between every double crochet there's always a chain. So look, I'm gonna skip one chain on the bottom, and I'm gonna work my first leg of the cluster in the next chain. I'm gonna skip a new stitch here and then another double crochet into the next. It's like I'm creating 2 cells out of one. So on top here I have 1 cell, on the bottom I already have 2 cells, 1, 2. Pretty clever, right? So since I do not have any picots here on top of the cluster, so I move on to see what next do I have. So I have a chain one next, and I work a chain one. Like I've made, generally speaking, this would be like 3 steps in one, because I didn't want to break the thread too many times. So another cluster. We skip one and we work 1 double crochet into the next, like an unfinished double crochet into the next stitch. And then we again skip 1 chain, and then we work another double crochet into the next stitch. And then we have, just like before, this chain is for me to know that here needs to be a chain, but I'm not working this chain, I'm working the picot instead of it. 1, 2, 3, and the picot that is between the 2 clusters, I'm gonna work it with a slip stitch in the 3rd chain from hook, like this. And then we have a cluster. So skip 1, another leg of the cluster, Now we have a chain 1 and then another cluster. If you have everything represented on paper, then it's very easy to follow your pattern. Like, you don't need to think. Some things you have to keep in the back of your head, like to remember that, oh, there I have this. For example, the fact that I'm working the picot instead of the chain, that is what I keep at the back of my head, and I know it. But if you see it on paper, it's always easy to remember what you're doing. So now I have to work the picot. So chain 3 and slip stitch in the 3rd chain from hook. So next one is a cluster. Skip 1 second leg of the cluster in the next stitch. Finish your cluster, chain 1, and then you have a cluster with a picot on top of it. These ones we work a little bit different, if you remember. So let's work the cluster first. So it's my second leg of the cluster. I'm finishing the cluster and then I work the picot. 1, 2, 3 chains. Slip stitch in the 3 front bars of this cluster. That is if we want to have our picot right on top of this cluster. All right, so next one is a chain 1. I'm gonna zoom in, I think it's correctly to say. I'll zoom this thing in and you can see it, the whole image. You can see the whole image. So chain 1, and then we have again a cluster. So if you have this chart and you understood how to follow it, I don't think I need to keep showing you. I'll only show you when I get at the end of it, just to reassure you that you're doing great. I also wanted to tell you this brown line here, it's nothing. Do not pay attention to it. That was for me when I didn't have a ruler to follow where I am at. So somebody interrupted me and I had to make a line to know where I stopped, and then I thought of a ruler to have. So don't pay attention to this because it's nothing. So I got at the end of my second repeat, and I'm gonna move my ruler back to here, back to this line. And then the next thing I have to work is the chain 1. And don't forget to always mark your 14th picot. It will be easier for you to join those motifs when the time comes to that. And this thing curls like this or twists, that's fine, don't worry about it. I think you're gonna be fine in the end anyway. So just keep following this chart until you complete all the necessary repeats for yourself, and I'll see you at the end of this round. I'm about to finish my round, so see this one, you have to untwist. As long as your chain is straight, then you'll be fine. You don't need to worry about how much it twisted before that. So I have 1, 2, chain 1, and I need to work my last cluster. Skip 1, first leg, and then skip 1 and the second leg. It's right here. And then work the picot on top of this cluster. And that's my last one. I'm gonna put a marker in, and I'm gonna move here. This is my last one, and then I have one more chain. So here, this thing keeps twisting, but you have to turn it like this because your first cluster is here. This is your first cluster, so slip stitch in your first cluster. That's it. Now we are where we need to be. So just like before, I'm gonna chain one. I'm gonna turn this thing like this, and I'm gonna go with a smaller hook. I'm gonna slip stitch along the back of these 3 chains because I need to be up here in these back loops of that first double crochet, which was actually made out of chain 3. I'm gonna slip stitch until I get to where I need to be. One more, I think I need to slip stitch somewhere here. So I got there to the top. So chain 1 and turn this like this, and you're back on your right side of work. Now this is how we're gonna continue working this thing. So we need these picots to be down here while we are going to work the skirt in rounds. So if you look at the chart, it was like this. I'm gonna turn it upside down like this, and we're gonna start in any of the V stitches. With what? With, now every time we're gonna work, so we start in any V stitch in the chain 1 space. So let's start first time with a single crochet. In the next V stitch, you're going to work the 3 double crochet cluster. In the next V stitch, you're going to work your single crochet. Here we have chain 3 in between these, and keep going like that. So one time you'll have a single crochet, one time you'll have a cluster. And every time in between these, chain 3. And that should get you started with the stitch pattern. Okay, so let me show you on the fabric. Like I said, we need to start with so we have a chain 1 here, so single crochet. Now we need to slip stitch until you get to the V stitch here. So just slip stitch. Switch to my regular crochet hook. Forgot I had the other one there. So slip stitch into the first V stitch, chain 1, single crochet here, and then chain 3. In the next V stitch, work the cluster, the 3 double crochet cluster. I'm sorry, I keep touching the camera and then it moves a little bit because it's not very comfortable this time. So 1, 2, 3, chain 3, and in the next V stitch, work a single crochet. And that's how you get going. This time you only work in the V stitches, okay? So again, chain 3. In the next V stitch you work a cluster, 3 double crochet cluster. So 1, 2, 3, chain 3, a single crochet into the next V stitch, and that should give you the required number of pattern repeats or number of popcorns. In my case, there will be 72 popcorns. So I'll see you at the end of this round. I got at the end of the row, and I'll finish this row with a double crochet in the first single crochet. Like this, and then I'll continue according to my stitch pattern. Single crochet into the first space, chain 6, and so on and so forth until you get back to where you started. From now on, you can just follow the stitch pattern accordingly, and you shouldn't be worrying about much. But I want to show you how to increase the stitch pattern when you need to. So that is very easy. Just want to show you something on my notes here. So remember my chart of the dress. So we've done that. Now we started on the skirt. My dress, the original dress, has 3 repeats of 72 popcorns, and then I increased to 81 and then to 90. The 91 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, 7 stitch pattern repeats with 90 popcorns. That's a lot. And then 3 times with 100 popcorns. So I want to show you how to increase, and I'll show you on the paper because it's going to be a long time till I get to my 4th, let's say, stitch pattern repeat in order to show you how to increase there on the fabric. So we have, let's say this is the last row of 1 stitch pattern repeat. Okay, it's the filet crochet row, right? So let's consider that this is whatever, it's 1 stitch pattern repeat, and then we start a new stitch pattern repeat which starts with another filet crochet row. Now we have 4 cells. Normally we would have a cluster, single crochet, so that would be 1 popcorn per 4 cells. But when I increase, I'm gonna work like this. So I'm gonna have single crochet in the middle of these 4 cells, single crochet in the beginning, and single crochet at the end of these 4 cells. Like I'm dividing these 4 cells in half. So my cluster will be onto this double crochet, and my cluster will be onto this double crochet. In between there will be chain 3s. So if before we had a cluster for the 4 cells, now we have 2 clusters in 4 cells. That's how you increase your stitch pattern, and from there on you're just gonna keep going accordingly. There's gonna be a chain 6, chain 6, chain 6, and so on and so forth. You continue working the pattern. So that's how you increase the popcorns. And for example, from 72 popcorns to 81, that is 72 divided by 8, let's say, or by 9 actually, that gives you 8 times. Now 81 divided by 9 gives you 9 times. So every 9 popcorns you're gonna have 2 popcorns for 1. So you're gonna divide your work into 9 parts, and there you'll have at the 9th popcorn here, at the 9th stitch pattern repeat, you're gonna work 2 stitch pattern repeats. Do you understand? Like you're gonna have 1 cluster on top, for example here, but then you'll divide it into 2 clusters. the way I showed you here on the chart. And that's what you're gonna do for every 9th repeat. It depends how many you have, so you divide them evenly into how many you need later. I'll also show you how I do this on the fabric when I get there, but for now, since this stitch pattern repeat is already set for the skirt part, what I want to do right now, this one, for example, I can continue anytime. I can continue anytime and go as long as I need. But for now, since I already have these picots done and the top is also done, I want to make the motifs and I want to join them so I could show them to you how to do them.